Wednesday. We've made it halfway through the week. I've got my tech working this morning. I'm excited for a good show. We've got our home inspection crew with us today at Sherwood, which is awesome. Appreciate you guys joining us every Wednesday. How's everybody doing out there? How are we midweek?
Really good.
John, you're good?
I'm good. Thank you.
You got
Productive
some,
week so far, so that's always good.
you've got some top-notch home inspection stuff to bring our way today for us, do you?
Yeah, we're going to talk about everyone's favorite space, the attic.
All right.
Todd's going to walk through an attic inspection with us and answer any of the technical questions. Todd's been an inspector for over 7 years and is going to be promoted to our inspector manager soon. But he's a rock star and he'll answer any questions you have.
All right, Todd. With no further ado,
Thank you, John.
let's talk attics.
All right, everybody's favorite place is the attic. A lot of clients, about half the clients don't like to go up there. But what we inspect for is the biggest thing is moisture intrusion. And we're looking for signs of that, bugs, mice, droppings, that sort of thing. That's the most obvious. Those three are the biggest things for the clients. For the house, we're looking for how the air infiltration, how the ventilation is set up, how the insulation is done, and physically go crawling through the attic the best we can. If there's no floor in the attic, we can't go through it. We've had too many people put their feet through the ceiling by slipping. So if there's no floor, we don't do that, but I try to do the best I can. And if there's a chimney in the attic, then I will, even if there's not a floor, I really try to get over to the chimney, see how the flashing is from inside. There's a lot going up in the attic. A lot of the older houses we have here in Connecticut, you'll find some knob and tube wiring still live in the attic, buried in the insulation. But the biggest thing from the client's point of view, from my perspective anyway, and I'd love to hear yours, is the moisture intrusion, mice droppings, and if anybody sees any daylight in the attic, is that supposed to be from the soffits or is that a hole in the roof? But I'd love to hear what the clients tell you, what they're looking for.
Well, one of the first things that you mentioned, let's talk knob and tube, right? So it seems like when it is buried in a wall, it's not visible, therefore it can't be touched. It's much safer. But the scenario that you proposed is we've got it exposed up in the attic. We got people trying to store boxes up in the attic. So now we've got the potential for a box hitting it, a piece of furniture that's being stored up there, whatever's being stored up there, to disrupt the knob and tube. So could you maybe just educate us on, is that the biggest concern? Is a disruption in the knob and tube, or what is it exactly?
So knob and tube was the original wiring. So you're going back to the 20s and 30s. And knob and tube is basically, for people who don't know, is porcelain tubes that they drill a hole in the wood, put the porcelain tube in, and the wire goes through that. Or you'll see a white porcelain standoff called a knob, and the wire goes through that. Back in those days, it wasn't one wire, it was two, one hot, one neutral. So all knob and tube has two wires going right next to each other. The problem is if they touch each other or they get too close, especially after 140 years, the casing around them has disintegrated. You get shot. And if the wires get too close near insulation, they can start fires. It really isn't a good scenario because there's nothing stopping the wires from touching anything else. It's not like the modern day wires or even the metallic, the BX type, everything is encased. In this case, it's just two simple wires strung through the attic or the basement. And you're right, Steve, if they're buried in the wall, that's not an issue. The only issue is when they come out of the wall and they're now exposed. Most insurance companies do not like live knob and tube, and it's a very simple, relatively simple job for the electrician. As soon as they come out of the wall, they put a junction box there, convert it to modern wiring. So you're not rewiring the whole house, just what is exposed. But it is a very scary setup. You're putting your boxes in the attic. You can step on it. You push them with the boxes, and that creates all sorts of issues. And the worst, of course, is being a fire.
Anybody have any questions around, knob and tube in the attic or anything around knob and tube in general?
Has anyone lost a deal because of that? Okay, that's fortunate.
Yeah. I'm sure I have over the years, John, for sure. I'm assuming Sherwood home inspection, you guys come across it, you're basically going to explain it just like Todd did. Hey, this shouldn't be a concern. We just need to address, the spots that are exposed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's very important for the clients to understand this is not a deal breaker. They don't have to people get scared. They got to rip the whole house apart and rewire it. That's definitely not the case. It's only when it's exposed that you have to be concerned about it. And if you're gutting the kitchen, the bathrooms, of course, you're going to rewire that part, but you don't have to rip out the plaster and lath walls and run new wires if it's buried.
All right, who's got other questions just about the attic in general? Anybody come across something or just, hey, this has always bugged me. I'm want to get your take.
I don't have any questions, Steve, but I know he said, what do people look for in the attic? I
Yep.
do have. So, as the heavy listing agent, I make sure that we get in that attic before I list because I don't want any surprises like that. And the things I look for is exactly what John just said, the knob and tube, which is a easy fix, and people get so scared. But that's an easy one. The other one is the bathroom ventilation. Is that ventilation going into the attic or is it properly going outside? That's a big one right there. Because if it's going into the attic, chances are we got some discoloration now. So, do we have discoloration up in the attic for any mold like substance? Is that going on? Vermiculite. Do we have vermiculite into the attic? And then, if we do have vermiculite, are we going to test it in 75 different places to make sure that it's not the asbestos vermiculite? Like, those are just some of the common things that I look for before I'm listing.
Yeah, and I think the key thing that you're talking about here when you're listing is before you list, right? So why do we care as listing agents about getting this stuff resolved prior to list? It's going to cost my client money. What if the buyer didn't care? The biggest issue is when the buyer does care. You've taken the property off the market. All of the buzz is gone. You're moving forward with this buyer. The buyer gets their home inspection and, there's mold in the attic. There's knob and tube. And we don't want to move forward because we can't imagine what else is going on with this property. And now I back out, and now that listing agent's got to come back to market. They're going to call all those other buyers. A lot of times they've moved on. It's just not a good scenario, right? So a good, strong listing agent should be talking this stuff over with their seller and say, hey, look, you don't have to do this stuff, but here's why I would recommend it. And that, and that, I think that in general is what the best agents do. They're trying to kind of look down the road, envision the things that can go wrong, and put their clients in the best possible position, whether that's with timelines, that's with financing, that's with the condition of the property. And this is why we're doing these calls, so that you guys get all these little things that can go wrong, because when they do go wrong, it really hinders your relationship with the clients, the amount of money that the clients are getting. It's just not a great scenario. And so the more experience that you can get, the more information that you have, the smallest little thing that you can pick up on these calls really could prevent, it might not be a deal this year or next year, but 10 years down the road. So if you want to be doing this for a long time, all these little intricacies are super important. Adam.
Good morning. Good morning. So just a couple comments here. Just to take your comment one step further, Steve, you may be aware of these issues and have clients. Now the attic's a little different. This is usually something more in the basement for knob and tube or asbestos wrap pipes in the basement, but it's also important to be talking to the buyer's agent when you get the offer to say, hey, look, like my seller is aware that there's asbestos in the basement, there's knob and tube in the basement. We're not taking care of this. Does your client understand what that is? Because there's nothing more frustrating than something we could have addressed up front that we all can see in plain sight. And then the buyer shows up with the inspector and all of a sudden it's a big deal when we knew it was going to be an issue up front. So just having the conversation with the buyer's agent if your seller's not willing to take care of those things up front. The second thing is vermiculite. So I've got a house with a vermiculite right now, and I just wanted to share some costs. I actually got 2 quotes. One was 12,000
Oh,
to get it removed, and one was 8,000 to get it removed. I think the 8,000 is probably more what it should be. So there's a whole nother, we can go down another rabbit hole another day on, there's a rebate process with Zonalite. I think it's a factory out of Minnesota that created this product that has asbestos. So the problem is because most people have put insulation on top of the vermiculite, they have to remove, they consider it contaminated. So they not only have to remove the vermiculite, but they've also got to remove the contaminated insulation as well. So just something to keep in mind, just very, very expensive. In my case, I would typically argue that it's a non-issue because unless you're changing a light bulb or something, there's really no way for that to enter the living space. But in this case, we have a whole house attic fan. So obviously that can stir things up a little bit. So bye, sweetie. Love you. So the question I had for the inspector though is, once in a while I do see houses where there's no scuttle hole, right? So I'm just curious what the conversation looks like when you come across a house where there's no way to really gain access to an attic. Are you peeping in like the ridge vents or what conversation are you having with the buyer when you come across a house and you can't gain access to the attic?
That's a really good point. My standard answer is we need access to the attic. And typically the seller, depending on how big the house is, if it's a Cape Cod and you only got a foot over the ceiling and it's encapsulated, there's no vents up there, I really push, you really need to get your head up there. You don't know the condition of the attic. I really push them to try. If the seller won't do it, as soon as you buy the house, have your handyman cut a hole up there and get up there. I've only had a couple of sellers who have agreed to that. And typically that's because they were contractors themselves or the father-in-law was the contractor. Other than that, they kind of balk at the fact someone's going to cut a hole in the ceiling. But I really push it hard. It's just one of those things that I keep telling them. I can look at the roof. That doesn't tell me anything about how the sheathing is, what the ventilation is. It's probably the original insulation up there, if there is any. So it's an inch thick. But it's really important to make sure you got the ventilation. You also don't know who's living up there. And especially if you see a gable vent and there's a little tear in the corner, the bees, the wasps, occasionally a raccoon and squirrels, you really need to know what's going on up there because it makes a huge difference in the longevity of the roof and the house. So yes, I push it pretty hard.
Any other questions on attic? Something that you've seen, something you're questioning?
Hey, I want to follow up with, I saw a comment from Chris. Chris, I saw something that said you tested multiple times and wasn't a problem. Are you talking about vermiculite?
Yep.
Because the only reason I bring this up, because I wasn't aware of this, but they basically told me 100% of vermiculite has asbestos in it. And the only reason they test is to figure out whether it's part of the 70% on average that was made in the zonolite, so you can get the rebate that's been set up by the trust fund. So I don't know what's accurate or not, but they told me there's no such thing as non-asbestos vermiculite.
So
So
that's not what, so Woodside and Agawam I just did a few months ago. They went in and had to test 5 different areas. It was like 3 to 5 areas because the different areas could have different whatever. And it was a full report and everything. And it did say that it was not the asbestos. And it was
Hmm.
something about the year or something. I'll find that report, Adam.
yeah, what just out of curiosity, in general, what age was that house?
Like the
80s,
50s.
90s, 60s, 40s,
No, 50s. It was
50s?
the one over, on Woodside over off of Main Street.
Huh, that's interesting.
But how do we know, like when I go up into an attic, right? And just so for people that don't understand, what am I even looking for, right? Like when I've seen this,
If you Google a picture of it,
yeah,
Yeah.
Steve, you
it's
can,
like
it's,
sand and like, it almost looks like there's like little
it
bits of
almost looks like
sand
full
and
gold, like mixed with cat litter. I don't know. There's no mistaking it.
yeah. And so that's what I'm questioning is, was it not even vermiculite that Chris that you're dealing with? Was it something completely different, or is that they're both vermiculite and one just doesn't have the asbestos?
It was vermiculite because I didn't catch it. It wasn't a caught that I caught at that time because it was a single mom, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have her go up in the attic,
Yep.
whatnot. And it came up at inspection. So, and the gentleman buying it was like really hardcore. Like Adam's saying, it's really not a big deal. So much is not a big deal, but you just have to get the one buyer that it is a big deal for, and he was adamant. So it was a game changer.
So were you able to keep the deal together, Chris, because you got it tested and it came back negative?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
Who ended up paying for the testing?
My girl.
Okay.
It wasn't crazy. I don't remember specifics.
What else is
But
going on in attics that you guys want to chat about here? This is
Or any
one.
other topics,
What's that, John?
or any other topics that you have questions on.
Any concerns with storing stuff up in the basement? What should, assuming that, in the basement, in the attic, is it affecting the house in any way? Should I not be storing stuff up there or, hey, you got proper ventilation, everything's good, you got no moisture, store stuff up there, no big deal.
No, absolutely. There's no problem with storing as long as it's good ventilation. Excuse me, because as soon as you get the humidity up there and you got cardboard boxes and all that, it's just food for mold and organic growth. Um, the only thing on some of the older houses, 1-story house built in the 40s, those attics were not made to like have a room up there, and so you have to sometimes be understanding how much weight you're putting up there. But realistically, most people don't put anything heavy up there because they got to carry it. Um, but other than that, as long as there's good ventilation and people know it's a non-climate controlled area and it's going to get cold, it's going to get hot. So don't put your favorite pictures up there. But other than that, there's no issue. I try to tell people just put stuff in the plastic tubs now. They're easy to carry and they don't fall apart when you're putting stuff up there.
Let me know if the following is true. I believe it's true, but it's the winter time, and we got a snow load on a property, so I can't get a good look at the roof. but I can see that my snow load on the property that I'm inspecting appears to be significantly less than the snow load on, let's say, the neighbor. Am I safe to assume that I've got poor insulation in that scenario? And so now I've got, the heat from my house going up through the attic, hitting the snow load, and that's why, I've got less snow on this property that we're looking at versus the neighbor. Could something else be going
Yeah,
on?
I mean, the only way to confirm that is to go into the attic if there's no insulation around the stairs or the scuttle. Um, if you're looking at a roof and it's no snow in one area and the shingles are dry, yes, absolutely, that's heat coming up. I've been tricked by wind that you have one side of the roof, and I honestly thought it was a heat issue, but it was just the way the wind literally blew all the snow off in one section, and it was dry. It was just perfect. Um, so yeah, you need to do a little bit more evaluation before you make a straight comment, and I fell into that trap myself.
Trying to think of what else is going on in attics. What else have you guys run into? Issue or not issue, just something you learned from doing inspections up in the attic. Anybody have anything?
A heating and AC unit that's up there, and then they make it so that the filter is almost impossible to change because it's in this itty bitty little spot.
Those are extremely frustrating. I don't know if John or Todd, you guys have any comments on that scenario.
It's always fun when you get up there and there's a air handler up there and you realize that they just put it up there, shoved it in the corner. No idea how this is ever going to get service. And then the homeowner puts boxes around it. The worst scenario is, and I tell my clients, I go up in the attic, there's an air handler up there and there's no floor. So how is the contractor getting there? And if the contractor is willing to walk over the ceiling joist, they're not doing a good job because they're more worried about falling through the ceiling than they are paying attention to the air handler and making sure everything, the inspection, the HVAC tech is doing their job properly. First thing to do is put in a floor and make sure the plywood is screwed or nailed down. I've been in attics where they just kind of threw wood down and you're walking around and it just slips around. So it has to be secured. And in that way, that the contractor is doing the job you're paying them for the best they can. But yes, some of these, and then the worst part is they put them in a knee wall and then they put it in the eave, they build a knee wall in front of it with a couple of access panels. So you're really contorting yourself to get in there. But that's always a fun one.
How about just ventilation in general? Let's say we've got gable vents, we've got no ridge vent. What are you guys going to recommend in those scenarios? Can you adequately vent just with gable vents, or hey, no? Or does it depend on size? Or let's just talk about ventilation a little bit.
So for ventilation, there's nothing wrong with gable vents. They're perfectly fine. You don't need a ridge vent. You don't want one. Gable vents are great. The one issue I run in a lot is they put an addition on the house. So now there's only one gable vent in the attic because the addition is blocking the other side of the house. One gable vent doesn't do anything. There's no air coming in or out. You need two to have cross ventilation. It's just the physics of air movement. If you have the soffits, you want the ridge vent. You go to a house, they replace the roof. It's a beautiful ridge vent. They got some soffits in there. That's great. And they had the original gable vents. Those gable vents should be closed up and sealed. I tell clients you don't have to rip them out and reside, just block them off from the inside because you want the air to come up from the soffits and out the ridge vent. If you have a gable vent, you're kind of short cycling the airflow and you're really not getting the airflow you want. Um, Ventilation in the attic, I think, is one of the most important things because keep the humidity out, regulate the temperature. It should be whatever the outside temperature is, that should be the temperature of your attic. If it's 20 degrees outside, theoretically, your attic should be 20. If it's 80 outside, your attic should be 80. Obviously, it gets a lot warmer than that. And during the winter, it really gets down to the outside temperature. But that's your goal. And the only way to get that goal is to have really good air ventilation.
So I want to interject there. I thought I heard you, and I'm pretty sure I heard it right, and it's making sense the way you're describing it. If I've got gable vents, I don't actually want to install a ridge vent. It's not like the more vents, the better, right? If I got gable, let it flow east to west. If I've got ridge, then no gables, and let's get soffits, and let's bring it up and through.
If you're redoing a roof, the best scenario is soffit and ridge vent. That's your best scenario. But if you already got the gable vents there, you don't have to put the soffits in. And if you don't put soffits in, you don't want the ridge vent. But roofers now automatically put ridge vents in. They don't even think about it. So in that scenario, put the soffits in, block your gable vents, or don't do that. Leave your gable vents there and make sure that they work. I go to a lot of houses up to the third, it's an attic. They replace the gable vents with windows, and the windows are closed. So there's no air circulation. Tell the clients open the windows about 2 inches, make sure there's a screen there. You need the air ventilation up in the attic. And I run into a lot on the inner city houses where they take the old windows out and they put new windows in, seal it beautifully, and they think that's wonderful. And it's actually the opposite of what they want.
Any final questions on attic? All right. Deep dive on attics. Appreciate it, you guys. We will take a quick look. Well, actually, I did not fix this from yesterday, so I don't know that we're going to be able to take a quick look at, yeah, this is just crazy to me. So I am going to have to remember to fix this today so that I can actually share that screen. But training available to you guys today. We have how to win at open houses, team cookbook, roundtable discussion, door knocking. I don't think we've seen that one before. Door knocking it out of the park. So if you're somebody that loves to door knock, that could be the class for you. 5 daily targets and succeeding in a new market. So if any of you guys have recently moved into the market, maybe this would be a good training class for you. So as always, appreciate you guys coming with some energy. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday, and we will do it again tomorrow. Take care. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.